The Headless Horseman of Belfast. Northern Ireland is a land where history and folklore intertwine, creating a rich tapestry of myths and ghostly legends. Among its most chilling and enduring tales is the story of Galloper Thompson, Belfast's very own Headless Horseman. Much like the infamous rider from Sleepy Hollow, brought to life in the 1999 Hollywood movie starring Johnny Depp, Galloper Thompson is said to haunt the misty streets and countryside, his severed head absent as he rides a massive black horse in the dead of night. But unlike the fictional setting of Sleepy Hollow, the legend of Galloper Thompson has haunted real streets, struck fear into the hearts of locals, and woven itself deeply into Belfast's supernatural lore. For generations, the sight of a headless figure galloping through the fog has been a terrifying omen. Locals speak of hearing the thunderous sound of hooves pounding the ground in the darkness, only to see a rider with no head, his sword gleaming as he searches for something, or someone. Whether he hunts for his stolen head, seeks redemption for his sins, or is simply cursed to terrorize the living, one thing is certain. Those who encounter Galloper Thompson will never forget the fear he brings. Much like the spectral horseman of Sleepy Hollow, Galloper Thompson is more than just a bedtime story to scare children. His presence lingers in the streets of Belfast, whispered in hushed tones by those who claim to have seen him. He is said to haunt the roads near Divis Mountain, where he was executed centuries ago, continuing his relentless pursuit in the afterlife. His legend has endured for over 200 years, not only as a ghost story, but as a part of Belfast's identity, puzzling paranormal investigators and captivating believers and skeptics alike. This is the story of Galloper Thompson, Belfast's very own Headless Horseman, a figure forever searching for what was lost to him in death. But who was he in life? And what curse binds him to the roads of Belfast, doomed to ride for eternity? Join us as we uncover the chilling tale of Belfast's Headless Rider, a ghostly figure that continues to strike fear into those who dare cross his path, and explore the eerie parallels between this haunting Irish legend and the Hollywood portrayal of the Headless Horseman in Sleepy Hollow. The origins of Galloper Thompson, a ruthless highwayman. The story of Galloper Thompson begins in the late 18th century, a time when Belfast was beginning to emerge as an important trading hub. With more goods and money flowing through the city, it became a prime target for criminals, particularly highwaymen, thieves who preyed on travellers as they moved along the roads connecting Belfast to other parts of Ireland. Among these criminals, one name stood out above all others: William Galloper Thompson. Thompson's moniker, Galloper, was earned through his exceptional skill on horseback. His horse, a huge black stallion named Midnight, could outrun any lawman's steed, making him a nearly untouchable figure on the roads. Thompson was known for his speed and agility, robbing carriages and escaping into the hills before anyone could give chase. But what made him infamous was not just his ability to evade capture, it was his brutal and merciless nature. Thompson targeted anyone who crossed his path, from wealthy merchants to small-time traders, showing no distinction in his choice of victims. His robberies were swift and violent, and those who resisted often paid the price with their lives. It's said that Thompson once ambushed a noble family travelling through Belfast, killing the father in front of his wife and children before riding off with their valuables. This act of cruelty would later lead to Thompson's downfall, as the noblewoman placed a curse on him, swearing that he would never find peace in life or death. The authorities in Belfast soon grew tired of Thompson's reign of terror, and a group of lawmen and local vigilantes banded together to capture him. But for years, Thompson managed to evade them, using his knowledge of the land and his horse's speed to outmaneuver his would-be captors. His ability to seemingly disappear into the fog led some to believe that Thompson had made a pact with the devil, trading his soul for his unmatched skill as a highwayman. Thompson's luck, however, eventually ran out. In 1798, he was betrayed by one of his own gang members, who revealed his location to a group of vigilantes. They ambushed Thompson as he rested near Divis Mountain, and though he fought fiercely, he was ultimately captured and executed. Thompson was beheaded on the spot, his head mounted on a pike and displayed in Belfast as a warning to other criminals. But while Thompson's body was buried in an unmarked grave, his head was never reunited with it. And thus began the legend of Galloper Thompson, the Headless Horseman of Belfast, who roams the roads and hills, searching for his missing head and seeking vengeance on those who wronged him. The first sightings of the Headless Horseman. Not long after Thompson's execution, strange reports began to emerge from the countryside surrounding Belfast. Travellers spoke of hearing the sound of galloping hooves in the dead of night, but when they turned to look, there was nothing there. Others reported seeing a shadowy figure on horseback, charging through the mist at an impossible speed, only to vanish into the fog without a trace. One of the earliest documented encounters with Galloper Thompson's ghost occurred in the early 1800s. A farmer named Seamus Donnelly was returning home from Belfast after a late-night market when he heard the unmistakable sound of hooves behind him. Thinking it was just another traveller on horseback, Seamus stepped to the side of the road to let the rider pass. But as the sound of the hooves grew louder, Seamus felt a chill in the air, a cold that seemed to seep into his bones. When Seamus turned to see who was approaching, he was met with a sight that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A massive black horse was galloping toward him, its rider cloaked in darkness. But what terrified Seamus the most was the fact that the rider had no head. The horseman's neck was a gaping, empty space, shrouded in fog, and in one hand the rider held a sword, gleaming in the moonlight. Frozen with fear, Seamus could do nothing but watch as the Headless Horseman raced past him, disappearing into the mist as quickly as he had appeared. When Seamus finally regained his senses, he ran home, telling his family and neighbours about the ghostly rider he had seen. At first, they dismissed his story as the product of an overactive imagination, but as more and more sightings of Galloper Thompson were reported, it became clear that something supernatural was happening on the roads of Belfast. A legacy of terror, encounters with Galloper Thompson. As the legend of Galloper Thompson grew, so did the number of reported encounters with the Headless Horseman. From travellers and farmers to soldiers and city officials, people from all walks of life claim to have seen the ghostly rider charging through the streets and hills, his decapitated form a horrifying reminder of his violent past. One of the most famous encounters occurred in 1850, when a group of soldiers stationed near Belfast Castle reported seeing a rider galloping across the nearby fields late at night. The soldiers, thinking it was a local farmer, decided to approach the figure. But as they drew closer, they realized that the rider was headless, his body cloaked in tattered robes. The soldiers were too stunned to react as the Headless Horseman turned his horse toward them and charged at full speed. The men scattered in fear, diving for cover as Galloper Thompson raced past them, vanishing into the darkness. Another chilling encounter took place in 1923, when a young woman named Mayreed O'Connor was walking home from a dance in Belfast. The night was foggy, and as Mayreed made her way down the winding road near Cave Hill, she heard the sound of hooves behind her. At first she thought it was a horse and rider travelling the same road, but when she turned to look, she saw a massive black horse, its eyes glowing red in the fog. The rider, like all the others before, was headless. Panicked, Mayreed ran, but the horseman was gaining on her. She could hear the hooves pounding against the road, and the cold wind whipped her hair as she fled. Just as she thought the horseman would overtake her, the rider veered off the road and disappeared into the trees. Shaken, Mayreed reached her home and told her family what had happened. They immediately recognized the figure she described. It was Galloper Thompson. Why does Galloper Thompson ride? Despite centuries of sightings and stories, one question remains unanswered. Why does Galloper Thompson continue to haunt the roads of Belfast? Is he searching for his missing head, or is he doomed to ride for eternity as punishment for his crimes in life? There are many theories about the Headless Horseman's motivations, but none have provided a definitive answer. The curse of the severed head. One popular theory is that Galloper Thompson's ghost is cursed because his head was never reunited with his body after his execution. In many cultures, including Irish folklore, it is believed that the soul cannot rest unless the body is buried whole. Because Thompson's head was taken and displayed as a warning, his spirit remains trapped between worlds, endlessly searching for the piece of himself that was stolen. A life of sin. Another explanation is that Thompson's violent life of crime condemned him to an eternity of unrest. In life, he was a ruthless highwayman who killed without mercy, and his death by beheading was seen as divine retribution. According to this theory, Thompson's ghost rides the roads of Belfast as a warning to others who might follow in his footsteps, a grim reminder that those who live by violence will meet a violent end. The Devil's Bargain. Some legends suggest that Thompson made a pact with the devil in exchange for his unmatched skill on horseback and his ability to evade capture. While this deal made him one of the most feared criminals in Belfast, it came at a price. When Thompson was executed, the devil came to collect his due. Instead of taking Thompson's soul, the devil cursed him to ride the roads of Belfast for eternity, forever chasing the living in a fruitless search for peace. Modern-day sightings. The legend lives on. Even in modern times, sightings of Galloper Thompson continue to be reported, further cementing his place as one of Belfast's most infamous ghosts. In 2017, Aidan Kelly, a motorcyclist, had a terrifying encounter with the Headless Horseman while riding home from work. Aidan was taking a shortcut along a quiet country road near Shankill when he heard the sound of hooves behind him. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but as the sound grew louder, Aidan turned to see a massive black horse charging toward him, its rider headless. Panicked, Aidan swerved his bike to avoid the rider, narrowly missing a ditch. As he looked back, the horseman seemed to vanish into the fog. The experience left Aidan shaken, and he later described the encounter as the most terrifying moment of his life. In 2020, Chris O'Neill, a taxi driver, had a similar experience while driving near Falls Road. Ciara was returning home after a long shift when she heard the sound of hooves behind her car. Thinking it was another vehicle, she glanced in her rearview mirror and saw a shadowy figure on horseback, galloping through the mist. The rider had no head, and the horse's eyes glowed red in the darkness. Terrified, Ciara sped up, but the sound of hooves followed her for several miles before finally disappearing. The Paranormal Investigations. Galloper Thompson's legend has not only terrified locals, but has also attracted the attention of paranormal investigators. In 2019, a team of ghost hunters from the Belfast Paranormal Society spent several nights investigating the area around Divis Mountain, hoping to capture evidence of the Headless Horseman. Armed with cameras, thermal imaging devices, and audio recorders, the team set up camp near the site where Thompson was said to have been executed. For the first few nights, the team experienced little activity, but on the third night, they encountered something strange. Around midnight, the temperature dropped suddenly, and the sound of galloping hooves echoed through the air. Though no horse or rider was visible, the sound grew louder and closer, as if an invisible force was charging toward them. The team scrambled to capture the sound on their recorders, but as quickly as it had started, the hooves stopped, and the air fell silent once more. When the team reviewed the footage, they found that much of it had been corrupted. Audio recordings were filled with static, and several video clips had been distorted. It was as if Galloper Thompson had interfered with their equipment, refusing to be captured on film. Though centuries have passed since Galloper Thompson's death, his legend lives on. The Headless Horseman of Belfast remains one of Ireland's most enduring ghost stories, a tale that continues to send shivers down the spines of those who walk Belfast's streets at night. Whether Thompson's ghost is searching for his missing head, seeking revenge, or simply trapped in an endless cycle of haunting, one thing is clear: he has no intention of resting in peace. Those who encounter him are left with a sense of dread that lingers long after the sound of his horse's hooves fades into the fog. For the people of Belfast, Galloper Thompson is more than just a ghost story. He is a reminder that the past is never truly gone and that some spirits will never rest.